Good day, folks. This is your hillbilly historian coming to you from the hills of East Tennessee, of Appalachia, to give you some truth in history that you won't find in your history books, high school or college. Now, today I want to have a short discussion about Harry Truman. Harry Truman, the hick from Missouri. He got picked to run as vice president in 1944 because Wallace, who FDR picked for his vice president in 1940, turned out to be a socialist Marxist communist, sympathetic to the Russian communists and communism and Marxism in general. In fact, Wallace's secretary was a card-carrying member of the Communist Party USA, CPUSA. And FDR, being the prime politician he was scared this might get out in the 1944 election and cost him his fourth term. So he picked this little-known hick from Missouri who worked in a haberdashery selling ties and shirts and socks for men in Kansas City, Missouri. A man who was not a very successful farmer who got into politics accidentally and was picked by the head of politics in Missouri by the name of Pendergast there in Kansas City. Pendergast picked Harry Truman because he was one of these yes men who would do what he was told, and that's why FDR picked him. And FDR just totally ignored him. He was not included in any of the critical discussions on World War II or the Manhattan Project or any secret project. He was, as vice president, he was kept in the dark. And when FDR suddenly passed away, Truman said it right. He said he felt like, a man, a farmer, whose entire hayloft had fallen on him. And but he was hired to do a job and he would do it. He fell victim to a lot of the Marxist communists in the deep state of D.C. Old tail gunner Joe McCarthy, he only made one mistake. He terribly underestimated the extent of the problem of communists in the State Department and the FDR administration, which became Truman's administration. Tail gunner Joe McCarthy, he knew there were communists there, but he just totally underestimated the extent of the problem. And they pretty much told Truman what to do. And Truman made some of the worst decisions, led by the Marxists and Communists of the deep state D.C., of any president in the history of the United States. Let me give you a few examples. One, Ho Chi Minh fought on the side of the United States in World War II. The French had colonized Southeast Asia, and Ho Chi Minh and the Viet Minh were fighting for their independence, and they were fighting against colonialism, French colonialism, and the Japs kicked the French out, and the Viet Minh fought against the Japs on their side in World War II. And at the end of the war, Ho Chi Minh wrote to Truman and said, "Let us have our liberty, our independence. Don't let the French come back, and we'll be a United States ally forever." And the Vietnamese are good people. They really are. Uh, but Truman took advice from the colonialists, the Marxist colonialists in D.C., and he let the French go back in. So many thousands, tens of thousands of Americans had to die because of this stupid colonialist decision. And America got its independence. It fought against colonialism. It was against the Monroe Doctrine was to prevent European nations from colonializing the Western Hemisphere. We were against colonialism, and that dumb hick from Missouri, Harry Truman, let the French go back into Vietnam, and many, many tens of thousands of Americans had to die, and many millions of Vietnamese had to die because of that stupid decision. And then, another example, he did not help Chiang Kai-shek whip Mao Zedong. He let the communists take over China. And Chiang Kai-shek ran to this little island of Taiwan, and Truman did not do a thing to help Chiang Kai-shek defeat the Chinese communists. And the Russians were helping the Chinese communists. Another example of a mistake Truman made, at the end of World War II in Europe, he let Stalin have whatever he wanted. He let Stalin colonialize Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. He permitted Stalin to basically colonize Eastern Europe. It was a shame. Patton was trying to tell them, I can be in Moscow in 2 weeks. We can put a stop to this. And they shut Patton down because of the pro-Marxist communists in the deep state of D.C. Truman, Marshall, all these people were victims of their control and advice, and they made the wrong decisions. Truman could have nuked Moscow, Leningrad, Stalingrad. Russia was so weak at the end of World War II, and Patton knew it. And Patton had German units training, and his units were still in good shape. He kept them training because he expected war with Russia. But Patton died in an auto accident, or he was murdered there in Germany to stop him advocating going ahead and getting rid of Stalin and the Russian communism. And Ike came under the influence of the Marxist communists in the deep state of Washington, D.C. And Truman was one of their pawns. He did whatever they told. And then when the Korean War broke out, he made another big boo-boo in getting rid of McCarthy and not letting McCarthy nuke the Chinese. That was absolutely horrifying. That every decision Truman made helped the communists. Every decision he made helped the communists. So many, many millions of people had to die in China because Truman did not stand up against Mao and his evil. And Truman, he had some character, but he listened to all the wrong people. He couldn't think for himself. And his knowledge of history was so poor, he didn't understand that we're anti-colonialists. We're for people having freedom, self-determination of people and countries being permitted to do what they want to do. And it's just horrifying that a man this dumb, this pathetically dumb, let communism take over. And at the end of World War II, Russia was so weak. Of course, General Galen, who was Hitler's Russian intelligence officer, convinced the OSS, the precursor to the CIA, and the American officers that Russia was a big, big, strong nation. They had bombers that could reach any city in the world, and they were developing nuclear weapons, blah, 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 blah. And of course, we didn't learn the truth about that until the U-2 flights in the late 1950s, which basically point out Russia didn't have a thing. And Stalin did not permit a census to be taken after World War II, because basically he'd lost millions upon millions of his civilians, 38 million soldiers at the end of World War II. They were using women in the frontline units as tank commanders and snipers and actual warriors on the front line. Americans who were buying these 16 millimeter cameras after World War II, the officers especially, and they were filming after the fall of Berlin and before they divided everything up into districts, and they were all intermingling amongst each other, and all these American soldiers were filming these Russian units marching through Berlin, and half those units were female. And without women becoming warriors, now Germany would not allow women to do anything except stay home and raise babies for the Third Reich. They were not even allowed to go to work. America and England allowed women to go to work in the industrial areas because the men were fighting the wars. And women also did military support services, like pilot planes to the front, from the factories to the front, medical services and food services and stuff like that. We allowed women to do that and go into the factories. England allowed women to do that. Germany would not allow their women to participate in the war in any way whatsoever. They were to stay home and take care of the babies and the children. And Germany relied on slave labor, which actually hurt them because slave labor would sabotage products to the extent they were unusable. And that really hindered the Germans a lot. But we didn't realize how weak Russia was until the U-2 flights under Eisenhower. And then the military-industrial complex said, hey, now that we've learned the truth, we've got to keep lying to the American people because we're just getting too much money out of them. We got to keep this going. And they did. Even to this day, we don't need a military as big as we've got. It's horrifying that we're this big. In fact, Truman was mentally a weak man. He had some character, but he was essentially a weak man under the control of the deep state Marxist communist leaders in Washington, D.C. And he made terrible decisions that cost not only the United States tens of thousands of lives down the road, but it cost millions of lives in Vietnam and tens of millions in China under Mao. It's just a shame that a man that we could have a president this weak-minded, this spineless, gutless coward, and he uh, threw one of our best generals out of office because he didn't, because McCarthy was anti-communist all the way, wanted to really, really destroy the communists in China, and Truman wouldn't let him. Fired him, brought him home. He was being looked at as a Republican candidate for president in 1952, but his health didn't hold up, so he was not able to lead the Republican Party. And they talked Eisenhower into becoming a Republican and leading the Republican Party from 1952 to 60. And Eisenhower twice beat one of the most brilliant Democrats in American history, and that was Adlai Stevenson. Great, brilliant man. I don't know if he would have changed the world any, but he was still one of the most intelligent, brilliant Democrats to have ever lived. But Truman was a mental midget, and he should not receive any accolades for anything whatsoever. He accomplished nothing. But anyway, that's it on Harry Simpson Truman. And this is your hillbilly historian from the hills of Appalachia, signing off. Thank you much.